So I'm going to take you through modeling buildings the way I do it, straight from the beginning to the end. This is going to be a couple of long videos. I've done a like a 3.5 minute one, which seems to be a lot of people seems to have learned quite a bit from that video, but there's been a few questions because it's quite a fast overview type video. So for those interested, this is going to be a slower, more methodical way of taking you through how I do exactly that. So let's just look at the reference. That's going to be the very first step. So I've collected some reference, um, and I want to extend one of my 3D packs into more of a favela effect. So I've collected some reference on the interwebs. That's the very first step you should be doing. Another tip, never ever reference from CG, reference from the real world, and then put that into CG. The CG stuff, some artists take a lot of, what's the word, creative license, and then the thought is for some people that that is what the real world looks like, and it's absolutely not. So you can see I've collected a few buildings, and that's given me the ability to identify materials that I'm going to be needing. So I'm going to need like a red brick cinder block, and I'm going to obviously need like a cement, maybe some boards and other assets, but let's focus on the core for now. The core two materials seems to be like a red brick and a cement, and I've identified those. It's good to do all of this before you start 3D, so you know what you're working with and collect a little bit of a kit. It doesn't have to be in 3D at the moment, but you need to know where to find it, and you need to know what you need. So I've identified this from textures.com, and I've identified this from Polyhaven. That will be my red brick and cinder. And then I've identified or designed a couple of assets here, and we're going to start with this one and then work our way to a little bit more of a complex one. It's a good idea to start busting some myths with regards to modeling buildings. So as you can see, quite simple, but you can see I've put the materials I'm going to need, and also I've put the decals that I'm going to need. So I'm going to keep the decals separately from the material. Reason for that is if I bake everything down, then I'm going to limit the resolution of what the textures are going to look like on the building. And when you take, if you take something like this to Unreal, if you wanted to, then it would be nice to have the option of um, doing textures at any resolution I want, and then adding the decals like with Unreal's decal over that. So I don't want to bake stuff like this onto stuff like that and then lose my adjustability, if you get what I'm saying. So I can see here I've put some basic dimensions to this building, and you should really go through this process. There's a saying that, well, I don't want to use a colorful language, but poo in, poo out. And what it is basically is the quality of information that you start with is going to contribute to the quality of the output that you deliver. So if you put nonsense in, look, imagine this being a machine. If you put nonsense in, it's going to spit out nonsense at the other end. So don't put in nonsense in the 3D machine. So with that, there's going to be a tile here. We're going to go modular. We're not going to go like block and extrude it up and cut it. That is very limited in that you then don't have the modularity, and if you don't have the modularity, you don't have the option to later use the same tiles and areas as parts of a kit of parts, which can help you build a large number of buildings. So, okay, let's just get to the point here. There's a tile here that I've identified, 2.2 meters by 2.2 meters. It's got a door, another 2.2 by 2.2. It's just brick, same here, but we've got a stair asset. That stair asset obviously has to be 2.2 by 2.2. Then we've got window and another variation of a window. We've got a sill, like a concrete sill. We've got a base and a concrete roof. And then we're going to have to make a a little bit of a square landing. So we'll go 2.2 here, then we'll do a square landing, and then a 2.2 balcony at the other end. And that's going to give us a kit that we can build a large variety of things with. So just to start, I'm going to build a tiles collection, and then we can start building in here. So the good idea to start with here is in overlay, put on wireframe. If you don't like full wires, you can tone down the opacity a little bit. I'm going to bring in a plane, rotate it on the X90, and then tab into edit mode, GZ 1 meter up, just so it sits on the pivot point. So now you can see the wire here. If you don't like let's just subdivide it so you can get a better idea. If you don't like the wires to be that black, you can obviously tone it to a level where you like. I like it normally at like 0.75. It's not as intrusive. But then I'm going to set this to the height of my full tile. That's the tile size that I've decided is going to work best. And then I'm going to bring in some of my reference here, just so I've got everything that I'm working with right here. So I'm working with this. Blender purges your file every time you close it, so I don't want that to happen. I want this, even if this texture isn't used, then I want it to stay. I don't want it to get purged. So I'll click this badge to create the fake user. So basically it'll trick Blender into thinking that this is being used somewhere, and therefore when I file, close, and then open, this will still be here. Otherwise it would be purged, so we don't want that. I'm also going to bring in my second asset reference sheet and then also save that, but let's skip in here, and now we can obviously, we've got everything we want right next to us. It's nice and easy. I'm going to start with, let's keep it simple, start with a plain tile. So what I think I'm going to do is just take these subdivisions out, obviously. And then I know that the top of a window is normally around 1.8 meters. So for me to keep track of dimensions here is the best way to do that is to go into the overlay menu and switch on my edge length. So when I collapse the scale here, I should be getting correct dimensions. So 1.1 meters, so this, I'm going to put that height at about 1.8 meters, so that needs to go up 700 mil. So now that's at 1.8 meters. A window, sometimes, depending on the size, your bathroom windows, I know is like 450 mil high, some 600. Normal window can be anything up to 900 mil. So I'm going to put a cut here, scroll it up, and then GZ 900 mil. So now I know that window is at 900 mil. And just to make things off a little bit interesting, I'm not going to put it in the middle. Symmetry just often kills your design. Nothing has to be symmetrical. It's nice when you want it to be, but yeah, it doesn't have to be. So GX minus 300, and that'll give this wall, which is essentially going to be that wall, a little bit of thickness. A brick is probably in reality around 200 mil, and then there's 100 mil before the window begins. And then I'm going to make another cut here, and GX minus 600. And that gives me a nice little window that's it's a little bit odd sized, and it's not symmetrical. So that's more or less what I want there, which is great. Then let's just call this is where I'll stop. I'll just create base tiles and then go into detail, and that's a good way of doing it. So window 001, and then we will create another tile. So I'm going to put this off 2.5 meters to the right, and then just delete the cuts by holding Shift Alt. Select them, and then Control X will just reset your face pretty much. So now for a door, exactly the same story. but the top of the door is higher than the top of a window. So I'm going to put the top of the door at 2 meters. That is what a door, standard door is like in South Africa. That's your height in Cape Town where I am. So I'm going to minus 200 mil, and then you should see your dimensions over there. And again, I'm going to offset the door, not fall into the symmetry trap. So I'm going to give myself about 400 mil before the door begins. And then the door here in SA, South Africa, is 1 meter wide. So nice offset little door. I'm going to give myself about 50 mil from the floor. That's where the door will begin. Obviously, if you straight cut through this, then you're not going to have a lintel or a step over in the door, which would be unrealistic. So I often like putting it just above ground level, which is great. Next tile will be, let's make a window variation. Let's just name this, otherwise it'll be chaos later. It's a good idea to just keep stuff named. Then Shift D for the window, GX minus 2.5 meters, just to keep it. I mean, I'm a product designer, so I work with dimensions. It's to be expected, I guess. It's what you get. So now I can actually, if I want to work on this dimension, I can put on my snaps over here and just set it on vertex. So now if I go tab into edit mode, select edge, and then hit Control R, then I can just scroll up and use the first one as a reference. But this one, I think I want the window to be a little bit wider. So here I'm going to go straight for the center, and then Control R, create one cut there, and then Control B just to bevel that cut out. Now if I hold Shift now, obviously, then it'll influence the speed at which that cut is being made. So I'm going to go for 1.2 meters to give me a nice wide window. So now I have essentially, I've got that asset, one window, I've got like a small window, I've got a door, Shift DX to 500, and then if I delete these cuts, Control X, then I have my plane sheet as well. So now I've got 1, 2, 3 things left to do. I've got a stair to do, and I've got a square landing and a long balcony to do. So for the stairs, depending on where you are in the world, I guess you'd have different standards, I guess, in terms of what that should be dimensionally. And I find it's a good idea to work within a wire cage here. It's just going to just make my life a little bit easier. So now, and you'll see what I'm doing now, I'm going to change viewport visibility to a wire, and then I'm going to switch on that filter and lock it so that I can't fiddle with this one. And then I'm just going to create a reference, so I make sure my stairs from this point to that point is the same as from this point to that point. And if I get that right, then I'm gonna just model over it essentially. So let's take one of these and duplicate it, and then I'm gonna go to 50 mil. That's kind of a standard stair size, and then 250 mil. So it's a very square stair. And then you'll see that's stair number 1. And I want to change visibility on this guy back into solid. So now is a good time to just collapse rotation and scale, put on just an array modifier, and then obviously we've got to go 1 forward and 1 up. It's a nice little firm up. Let's just, okay, then dimensionally, let's change that stair to So it doesn't really, just doesn't work out. So 200 by 200, collapse, rotation and scale. And then let's see where we are. That looks better. Now we are in line with our dimensional tile size for creating a modular kit. This works, so I can work with it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock it, and then I'm going to work over it. So this is just, I mean, there's many different ways to do stairs. This is just the way that I like. It's proven it works. And then just get that in there, and now I can tab into edit mode, and then just this is almost as dodgy as some of the buildings we've got here in Cape Town. Yeah, there's some architectural wonders down here, and obviously an unemployment rate of 43% for the country didn't really help the cause. It's an interesting place to live in. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I don't think other countries in the world would struggle to, well, other cities, struggle to hit the same kind of spot that Cape Town does for me. I absolutely love Cape Town, but it is interesting to see the state of affairs down here. It's yeah. Let's not get sidetracked. So now it's literally hitting two edges at the same time, and hit F. So that you can see what I've done here now. If I switched on those cubes, then I've essentially created a one-piece concrete cast slab. So now I'm just going to weld those vertices and then take a cut from here all the way. So hit K, hit that vertex, nice little enter, and then I can go into C. Just paint select mode. Just get as much as I can without getting too much, and then we'll delete that, and then we've got a proper cast concrete staircase. So collapse, rotation and scale, move the pivot point. Obviously that shouldn't even be mentioned, I think. Let's just go and add some thickness, and the thickness here is going to be 1 meter, the same as going to work the same as a door. And obviously later on we'll round edges and everything. Right now we're just building a kit, and I'm going to shift in and flip the normal direction, and then I'm going to move this guy to 0 on the y-axis, hit that to 0, and see, this is the product designer in me, doesn't like those kind of dimensions. Okay, we have stairs, and then I think it's probably a good time to save the file. So now we're going to need a landing, and we're going to need a balcony. So best way to do this is just take it straight from here, because we know this is the right height, this is the right width as well. So for me, I can just go apply that and shift DX and hit this about 500 mil, and then P to separate it by selection. And now just hit select all, EX 1000, and that gives me perfect square landing. And I'm going to move the pivot point over there, because it'll just be helpful later. And now I've got a stair, I've got a landing, and now I need a balcony that is the same width as that. So what's happening here is wherever the stair extends, we're using the square landing. Wherever the balcony runs, we're using the 2.2, same as the tile. And then if there's a stair on this side, we're going to use a square landing and then a 2.2. Doing it that way is just it just puts a lot of modularity into this kit. So to do that balcony, I'm just going to go DX, put it 1 meter, well, 1.5 meters off, and then this can be, it's 1 meter now, we want it to be 2.2, so GX 1200, and now we've got our basic set. So now obviously next step would be just hit everything, Control A, rotation and scale. This seems like almost too basic, and but it is really a good way to start. So next thing to do now is we'll start identifying some of the details, and then we'll put some of those details in. We'll work the sills and everything, then we'll work the doors, and then we'll work the window, and then we'll work a tile for the roof and the base. But just follow me through in this, and then we will catch up on. All right, day 2. A couple of more kit items to do. And then on day 3, we're probably going to dig into more detail on these kit items. So let's get going. Couple of things here. We've done wide window, small window, door, and just plain straightforward panel. And today we're going to be doing a sill, or a concrete sill over here, and then the roof part, and then the porch part. And we'll do it in a way that makes sense to use modularly. Sorry. And then a corner piece. So a corner piece, what is nice to keep in mind when you're doing modular kit, let me see if I can get my grease pencil up here to explain something quickly. If you have, I'm going to try and draw in perspective. If you've got a wall like this, and then you need another wall going there like that, then what you might struggle with sometimes is when you're doing modular kits is tiling. So for me to do a corner like that and have this as brick, that as brick, the corner, and that as brick is going to be a problem, because you're going to see a tiling seam here, and you're going to see a tiling seam there. The other alternative is I use a panel like that over here, and a panel like that over here. So you're snapping a corner to a corner, which is great. We're going to do that anyway, but it is nice to have a separate corner piece, because that's going to give us the ability to change up a few things and have a couple of variations in terms of look and feel. So it is nice to have a corner idea, but that corner idea will, in top view, if this plane is here and my other element is here, then in top view we'll do a concrete extrusion, then a corner, and then a concrete extrusion, or concrete extrusion like that, and then this is wall, that's wall, and this is concrete. What that does is it breaks your tiling in a way that makes sense now. So you've got a material, one material, material A, then you've got a corner which is material B, and then you've got the other wall going back, which is material A again. And because you're joining 1, 2, 3 parts, but in the middle you're splitting them with a separate material, that eliminates trying to match textures. That doesn't really, it just eliminates difficulty with seams. So let's do that. Hope I explained that well. Anyways, forward if you have to, if you want to, if you feel the need. I don't care. So, Shift D, X minus 500. And that's normally that's the kind of spaces I like to keep between. Then EX minus 500. 500 mil is a nice corner size. EY 500, and that gives me the corner as it is now. And as I said, I'm going to extrude it forward. Now, concrete extrusion normally is anything between If you look at a lintel, it's anything between 75, sometimes 50 mil, but 75 and 100 mil. So I'm just going to extrude this forward by 75, gy minus 75, and then I'll bring this out, extrude that by minus 75. Obviously we're going in the opposite direction of the axis. So there's our corner piece. Now I can just hit Control L and P and break that off. Maybe move the pivot there. So now I'll be able to do separate corners like this, which is really fantastic. Then we'll do the same for a type of concrete lintel over there. Let's just get exit. Yeah. This guy. And then we will do that guy. So again, take the points that you have. So then otherwise you're just going to have to always scale things up and make sure things are the correct size. Just take the closest piece of geometry that you have and duplicate that up. So Shift DZ 500 and then P to separate it. And now you'll see I have vertices that matches up to that already. I can keep it or delete. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's probably best to just get rid of it for now. So I'll grab that lintel. I'm going to go is about probably 300 mil, sometimes 200 mil. Floor, decent floor that I learned in structural here in South Africa anyway. By the way, just as a point of interest, I mentioned I'm a product designer, but I did structural, civil, mechanical, electrical, water, gas, all those kind of technical drawings for a year, and then I studied product design for 4 years. Anyway, 300 up, that's your lintel. And that's going to come out a little bit as well. Forward, again, 75. E minus 75. So that's what I have over there. So I'm going to open up the sides, because if I tile this left to right, then and you attach everything right at the end, then you don't want faces in between. So now I can, if I drag this down here, then I'm not going to have any double faces at the end, which is, it's always a pain. And then I'm going to create a version of this for a corner. So let's again take the closest piece of geometry. I have that. I'm going to go do Shift D Z and snap to the lower area there, and then hit P to separate by selection. Now I can just hit A, E, Z, Z. Thank you. And then I essentially have my corner already. Again, open your faces that are gonna butt up to any other faces, and then you should be good. Yeah, so let's just put the pivot point on these at the same depth that that face will be in, and then the same here. And then we're going to start assigning materials to the stuff, just so we can very early on make sense which is which in terms of material. And then we'll do obviously UV unwrapping and texture scaling, which is always a fun one. Let's call it that. Okay, so now the porch. Probably makes sense to just take that off the door, but it doesn't really matter actually. Porch I'm going to go for, I want the porch to come out as, think about this. You've got a human being coming down here, and then you have a porch, and then you probably are going to want to have another human being able to pass there. So my porch is here, and that's 1 meter. And then in terms of of humans and foot traffic, they need another person needs to be passing here. And universal design principles that I've learned, you need about 750 mil for a human to comfortably pass at minimum. So we'll go for a porch that is at least 1750 or 2 meters out this way. And this seems like a lot of nonsense in between, but the closer you keep your 3D modeling and CAD and everything else to reality, the more easy it is for people to sort of find the believability in it. When things are unrealistic, it becomes a problem very quickly. So let's just take, again, the closest piece of geometry that we have, Shift DZ minus 500, and then P to separate that. You'll be sick of it soon. Then EY minus 1000, and I'm going to make it EY minus 1000, but the nice thing is now we have a cut there already, which is really great. It's exactly what we want. And then depending on the height we want, we can probably go again back to universal design principles. A step, comfortable step is normally about 200 mil, so I'm going to do 2 steps here. In other words, EZ minus 200. EZ minus 200, and what that enables me to do is I can put in a cut here and then GY 250 or even GY 50. So now I've got a 300 by 200 step, which is really great. That's exactly what I want. And then I can obviously just hit F to fill that and hit F to fill that. So there's a porch with a step. And again, take the closest piece of geometry. Same story, Shift DX to the nearest point, P to separate that, and then A, E, X. And that should give me something as 2.2, like everything else. And let's call it porch before this gets wild. Porch. Does it have a T? Don't know. Porch. Oh, 1. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to put the pivot points over here for now. We can always move it if that's not the ideal place. I like on the corner on the left. That's kind of the placing that I am used to. Okay, we've got a lintel in between. We've got a corner, so this lintel is that. Then we need a roof that kind of extends outward. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to take the closest piece of geometry. No surprise. Shift DZ 15, just to give myself a little bit of space. P, and that should give me vertices over there. Yes, it does. And I'm going to do a concrete lintel on the roof that goes, it'll essentially go, looking at perspective, out, up, in, down, and then like that. This would be a separate panel, though. It'll just be like a plane. And normally how these roofs work, you're going to ask me, well, how will it drain? How is drainage going to work? Well, normally in civils, architectural, there's a very slight, like couple of degree slant, and then one area you'll have a little bit of a pipe, probably more at an angle like that, and this would be the lowest point in the roof by 1 degree or 2 degrees. So that's normally how drainage works. Again, keep things realistic. If you represent the real world, then people don't have issues believing what you've done in 3D. So my advice is just keep it real. So EZ, let's call it 350. Let's make a nice big one, and then extrude it forward quite a bit. E350, no, GY minus 400, make it proper. Again, get rid of side faces. You don't want any of, trust me, if you have a face on the side and you don't notice it, and you start building with your kit of parts, and you collapse everything down at the end, and you start hunting down Z fighting and double faces, it becomes an absolute nightmare, especially if you've got, when I did the Soviet pack and the Hong Kong pack for Brad's light architect, it was one of those, I think it was like a 15 or 16 story buildings, and I had to manually go and hunt down double faces just because I made a basically just wasn't paying attention when I modeled. You don't want that, trust me. It end up like it'll cost you time that you could have just used better. So now the corner, same story. I think what we're gonna do is, well, before we get there actually, let's split that in half, and just to mix things up again. So EZ minus 150, and then this is where your plane, the roof, will come in, your top section. You get where I'm going. So now, again, take the closest piece of geometry, and I can't begin to tell you how many times I've sat and watched people modeling handrails for stairs, and then they battle with it, and I'm just like, well, if you took that vertex and shift D up and hit F in between, you would have a rail. Just take the closest piece of geometry. It works every time. Shift DX, snap to closest piece, and then P by selection. Hit A, E, X, and there we go. And now we're obviously going to do a 45 degree up here, otherwise things are not going to work out great. So what I think I should do is probably put the pivot point over there, and then rotate this by 90, and then move it only on the X, no, sorry, only on the Y axis. Probably put it closer to median, I think. Because now my closest snapping isn't working. I need to snap it by median so my pivot point can line up here. And I've got this. Yeah, so now we are winning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this face out until it hits that face, but only in one direction, and then do the same, and then we'll have a 45 degree join. So GX, sorry, Y, and let's make sure we're snapping to a vertex. Yeah, closest. GY, snap to that face, and this one will need to be GY, snap to that, and this will be GX, snapping to that, GX, snapping to that, A, and then if you've put your if you're using your shortcut menu, your quick menu, I would recommend putting your origin point, shade flat and smooth and curve and mesh in there. So now I can go into sub-object, hit A, and then because I put welding in here, I can weld by distance, which is great, and that tells me it's removed 5 vertices. So that gives me the corner piece on the roof, the lintel, corner there, and then we can probably take one of these panels to create a little bit of kit variation. GX minus 5,000, shift GX 25. And then what would be nice here is to just create half a panel. So essentially take all of these and hit Control X, get rid of them, and then create a lintel in here, and then create another one of those. So you'll have a bit of a T. In other words, this will be full span brick, and this would be brick halfway, and then cement down the middle. So you have a short brick over here, short brick over here, cement over here, leading up to a cement lintel over here. So that's just, it's not required, it's not necessary, but it does create a little bit of kit variation. The more parts you have, the bigger the variety in your kit is, which is really great. Now, again, I keep my dimensions the same. So in terms of width, that's 300. So I'm going to make this lintel 300. So I can go just create the, what do you call it, bevel tool, I think it is. Control B. And then I can even put in 150. And if I type in 150, it'll go 150 that direction, 150 that direction. So it'll give me 300. So Control B, 150. And I know that lintel is 300 mil. So extrude E minus Y 75. And that should be the same as that. Yes, that's also 75. And now I have a lintel here that will come up and connect over there. We can obviously just create a lintel that will do exactly that, but give it a couple of cuts in the middle. Reason being is later we might feel we want to round some of these corners. And if we do that, then this and that will join up nicely. Okay. GX minus 500, just to keep spacing nice. That is it for today, and then tomorrow we're going to start just putting in windows, we'll put in doors. You'll understand why we're doing this in a kit soon. When we start putting together buildings, it's going to start going very, very quick, and then we're going to have quite a large variety of assets quite quickly. Anyway, chat on day 3. Cheers. All right, day 3, some windows and details. Before we get there though, one thing that still needs to get added to this porch is a corner piece. Yeah, we will get to that, and then we will get to the detailing. Quickest way to do that probably is, you guessed it, take from the closest geometry separate it, and then use that. What I'm going to use now is just put my pivot point at the back, and then you'll see what I do. I'll do another one like this, rotate Z minus 90. So now I can actually, I'm going to kill these vertices maybe. Well, it's probably not necessary. And we're done. Easy peasy. Simple as that. Corner piece, done. Porch, done. So, details. I just collected some window assets based on the reference we went through on day 1. And you can see I just went for a variety of windows. Slide open with turn or hinge open and push open at the top, and just normal, and then a smaller bathroom window. So obviously your type of bathroom window will sort of go here. That's a smaller one. This one could be a variation of that and that, and we'll see how we go. And again, we're gonna do the thing that I tell people and they never listen, and I keep telling and they never listen, is whenever you do something, take the closest piece of geometry and create it from that. What that means is you don't have to size things up constantly, trying to rework sizes of different components to different assets. Just a simple story. So probably a good idea to make a little bit of a sill here. Maybe there as well. Just that will bring in some variation. I'm just going to do these at the same time. So E, it's already set to Y, and I'm going to take it in about 100. G, Y, 100. Let's make it 150. GY 150. And now I can hit P, separate that, and then yeah, so now we have a plane to use in order to create a window. I'm going to go for, let's copy a version out here so I can create different versions for the same tile, and I'm going to do the same here. Actually what I should have done is just that first. Okay, so now I'm going to start with this guy, and I want to do the frame first, I reckon, and then do something like that almost. So what I'm going to do is just hit I. Now I reckon a frame is around 30 millimeter, a standard aluminium frame, and then go E, Y, and call that minus 30, GY minus 30, GY 30. It's not awake enough for this. And then bring it back in and just actually put in some cuts first. I think that's going to be the better idea. And then if I hit Control B now and type 15, then these would also be 30, because 15 cut to both sides of the line. E, Y minus GY 30. Now we have a square frame. Geez, that took way too long to get there. So that's option A done, basically. Gives us one type of window. Then for this, I'm going to put in a cut around, let's call it minus 250, GZ minus 50. So it's about 300 mil down, and then I'm going to put a cut in straight in the middle, and I'm going to hit 3A, I, and then I again to come in by individual faces. Put that at 30, and then Control I to invert selection, extrude 30, and then that should give me exactly what I'm looking for over here. And now we have a frame, but now we'll have to create like hinges, almost a little frame within a frame. So I'm going to do I, and this will be a little bit slimmer, so 20, and then I can hit plus to separate that by selection. Now hit A and separate by loose parts, so that will give me separate windows for each section. So now if I hit this and then Control I and then extrude 15, then that frame will come out a bit. So again, Control I, E15, and again Control I, E15. Again, Control I, E15. And now I can create some hinges actually. So I can, at the back, at the pivot point, just move my pivot point over there, and then same thing here, Control S, move my pivot point over there, and then rotate X 5, or rotate X minus 10, rotate X minus 15, just so they're not all the same. Here, what I'm going to do, I think, is let's just keep these ones like that. Keep quite a big one. And what we can then do is obviously GX, just get this out of the way. Shift DX to 500, GX minus 2500 gives me another one. I'm going to delete this window. I'm going to take, let's just build a little window library. Take that one, G, Shift D, and put that in here. So I've got the same tile now essentially, but different window variation, and that's going to come in very helpful later. And then obviously I can do another one, or we can give this one a little bit more detail, which I think is the way that I'm going to go. So again, I 15, and then Control plus and P by loose parts. So now I should have P by selection and then P by loose parts. So now I've got 3 separate windows, and then I can obviously on these windows Control I and then E15, Control I, E15, Control I, E15. So you get why I'm doing that. I'm just selecting the easiest faces and then inverting that selection. So now I'm going to put my pivot points on here, on the corners where I want the window to hinge from. It is nice to just, in real life, you're never going to have a situation where all windows are closed. It just looks unnatural, makes the scene not believable. So rotate Z, I'm just going to rotate it to a point where you can't really look in, so you're not going to see the back of the frame necessarily. Rotate Z minus, let's call it 15. Rotate Z 10. So I've got a little bit of a situation like that. Not the best viewing this clip, it's actually very dull, I presume. Hopefully you'll learn a couple of things. We can also do a big window, but now we seem to have a couple of window options here, and then the basic window tile. So I'm going to just mark this as, and this is how I work. I'll make notes for myself. Just nice to keep your scene, know what's going on in your scene. It's helpful. So now we've got some windows for that. Create a couple of cells and then we'll attach things in a little bit. So GZ minus 100 and then E, let's call it 150. That would be a nice little window cell, and then GZ minus 50. And that's going to create a slant for rain or anything to fall off. So if it rains on here, it's just not going to get stuck up there. It's going to continue down and fall off the cell, which is great. That's exactly what you want. In real life, everything outside in terms of architecture should be at a little bit of a slant. It's not sometimes, but it should be. Grab a little bit of coffee. For here, let's create a little bit of a variation. I'm going to create a little bit of a roof, GZ 30, and it'll literally be just let's call it 50, and it'll be a little bit of a concrete piece that just juts out. So E100, and then again GZ minus 30, and that'll give you the slant. Now here, it could be one of those cases where it's possibly a nice little detail to extend this thing past the window. It's just not that dull, you know. And if everything's the same, your 3D exercise turns quite dull quite quickly. It's one thing I learned from product design and designing display stands in store. Things being symmetrical and things looking the same it's never great. People get people get tired of it. Everything doesn't need to be symmetrical. Everything doesn't need to conform to some form of rule. It's good to break the norm sometimes. Very good, actually. Okay, a couple of variations there. So we've got windows and sills in there, and we'll put materials on in a little bit, maybe on day 4. The idea is that you have enough time to do one of these sessions a day. All right, bathroom windows, by the looks of it. Let's go. Option 1, create 3 cuts. That's a nice little tall window. And then all I30 gives me my aluminium frame. And then I'm going to go in by minus 30. And then I'm going to go separate that by selection. And then create the windows and their frames. This is an oval frame, and then I'm going to do the windows and their frames separately. I15, it's a smaller frame obviously. Control plus, or Control I rather, and then no, hang on. I15, Control I. I think I might have created double faces here. Control I. Yes, now they're gone. E15. Now that's all my bathroom windows. And now I can separate them by selection. So for the top, again, pivot points where you want it to hinge from. And then if we're done, we can always go and attach these things to each other so that we don't turn this into a scene management exercise. Rotate X. Not yet, obviously. At the end. Now I've lost my pivot points. I missed surfing yesterday. I haven't been surfing in about 10 years, and last night I was just at a point where for some crazy reason I just had a surf craving. There's nothing quite like doing your first cut and seeing the water just cut out the land, block out the land totally. That's one thing that climbing doesn't give me, is that feeling. Climbing is great, but it's I think each of these sports just have their own moments, I guess. All good for mental health, but they all have their different special moments. I can really recommend, if you spend as much time on the computer like I do, and it's quite a bit, unfortunately. My day job is rendering outdoor gear right now. I quit the display industry because turnover and deadlines and those kind of things just got eventually. I've been doing it since 2007, and at some point you get to a point where it's difficult to deal with deadlines every day. And display stand deadline versus the deadlines that I have now, it seems to be a little bit more lenient. But the POP, or point of purchase display stand industry, is rough, and if you're considering that, then yeah, make sure you get enough rest and get enough outdoor activities for your mental health, because it will get wild at some point. GZ75. Why is this not moving? GZ75. Actually, I'm going to put this one down here. GZ minus 75. E50. I'm going to make this one short and a little bit different. GZ minus 25. So, yeah, we've got some variations. I'd like to add in more variations at some point, but let's keep it here for now. It's our other windows, and then I'm going to create or just leave a unedited tile up there so we can get to it later. It's good to have your base tile and your base tile and then a couple of variations up there. Otherwise, if you lose your base tile, then creating new things later becomes a little bit of a mission. So next video we're going to be doing materials. We're going to set up the basic material slots for them and then start assigning materials, and on the video after that, and then you'll see how quickly we will start building things. This is a bit of a slogging, obviously, forward through the stuff, but once it starts going fast, then it will go very fast. Thanks, fellas. See you on day 4. This is day 4, I believe, or day 5. I'm not sure anymore. Can't keep track of this. Anyway, so unwrap and setting texture coordinates. So the aim here is not to unwrap everything perfectly, because at the end of the day, once we have a full building, we'll unwrap the building, but the aim is to set the seams. So we're setting the seams now, because if there's unwrap errors in each tile and I copy that tile 100 times over or 50 times over, then it becomes very difficult to fix 50 errors. So unwrap at this point is quite good, and also working with the texture scaling at this point is a good idea. So let's actually, before we start, create some basic materials. We know we're going to have brick. We know we're going to have a concrete sill, and we might have 1 or 2 other things. At the very least, let's do brick. Brick, and then make sure that we have a material up here. Now we're not going to assign the material. What we're actually going to do is we're going to assign a new image and give it a UV checker. So UV checker, which we will then later swap out for it's called a UV color grid. And we will later swap this out for the actual material, but first we will need the UV checker grid to see that everything unwraps properly. So if you haven't worked with this, there's a couple of things you'll notice. You'll notice the color changes, and you'll notice the letters and the orientation of the letters. So if I unwrap a piece of mesh like this and the text is backwards, then I know my geometry should be flipped. And if I know that and that are 2 very different sizes on this mesh, then I know different parts of the mesh doesn't have uniform scale on it. So this is very useful. I'm going to hit the fake user button so we don't lose this when we purge the file. Then I'm going to do the same thing and make a sill material. Now sill is windowsill. Sill, and then I'm going to make another one, concrete beam. Alright, and in each of those we're going to do the UV checker. So right now UV color grid is assigned to the concrete beam. In here I have to hit Z and hit material preview so I can come in and actually see what I'm doing. So again, image texture and UV color grid, and brick, image texture, and UV color grid. Now these are things that I actually have set up at home because I do so many buildings. I did 15 for the Soviet pack for Light Architects. I did 15 for Hong Kong. I've done probably about 40 for my own stuff. Just keep going. Some stuff I did over the last 2 evenings. So I work in modular. Assets. Modularity is the only way that you can quickly produce stuff like this, highly complex stuff. Anyway, let's not talk about it, but actually do it. So now, start unwrapping. This doesn't have any seams that needs to be cut, so I'm just going to make sure before we begin, everything in the scene has got rotation and scale collapsed, except fonts, which can't. Okay. So that seems to be, yeah, sorted. Okay, so now if I hit Tab and A, unwrap, we're going to see that we're going to have a uniform unwrap here, which is, now if you want to be meticulous about this, then you can hit A, Control M, X, and you would just get a better orientation of your letters, and you can start doing this. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of that now. My main focus here is I don't want any stretching, so that is going to be the focus. So setting seams on a thing like this, you're obviously going to set the seam to break the concrete apart from the wall. So at the very least, that needs to be a seam. Now if I hit 3, Control L, that should be sill, and that should be brick. Now if I unwrap now, I'm going to get something like that, and that is all wonky because I don't have all the right seams in all the right places. If I mark that as a seam, probably mark these as seams, and then mark these as seams. I'm not going to mark this as a seam because then it's going to separate all those parts, and I want that to attach to that face. See, now the unwrap is a lot more uniform. Before I go into Unreal, which we're not going to do in this video, I will want to set up some padding, so 0.1 or something. Otherwise, when Unreal bakes your light map, you just run into some serious trouble. So I've disconnected the brick, and that gives me the sill. Alright, so now, same story. So I'm going to load my brick here, and then on the sill, I'm just going to select the front face and hit plus. That should expand the selection, and then on that, sill assign. So now I've got my sill assigned as well. Now set seams over here, and then obviously surrounding the concrete area, the entire unwrap for the concrete area, and E mark seam, and then I'm going to mark this as well, so that can just flap out. And then let's break this. Control E, mark seam, and now we should be good. It's not necessary to mark all of these as seams. It's probably just across, so that all these faces don't detach from each other. This and this is connected, that and that is connected. I try and normally have as many things stay connected as possible. Same story. Mark seam, but hit 3, hit plus. On that one, I'm gonna assign the concrete beam, and then Control I to select the rest of the mesh, and then brick assign. And now if I hit unwrap, we're gonna see there aren't gonna be any issues. Control MX would flip the Control MX would flip that face. Control MY, Control MX. There we go. Got the right orientation. Same story. This is where you start skipping videos. By the way, I was watching Last of Us last night. I'm just doing 3D now. I love buildings. There's nothing I love as much as modeling buildings and structures and those things. I'm not much of a character modeler. I hate it. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. But the level of production quality for The Last of Us is something that, well, it's HBO, so it's to be expected. I mean, they're phenomenal. But it is something that I am enjoying on a quality level. The quality of their production and VFX is absolutely mind-bending. Let's set seams in the corners across from each other and then unwrap, and then we don't have any textures pulling in weird ways. If we wanted to, we can flip it, but we're not. It doesn't really. This is going to happen at the end when the whole building is assembled, so I'm not too phased about that. This is just going to be brick. Oh, ouch. Okay, we forgot something yesterday. Minus 300 for the door. I'm going to delete that. Because we're going to put a door in here, and then we're also going to put something like a security door over the door just to give different layers of depth. It's normally just good to give nice little depth variations, I guess. That's something I learned in point of sale and display stones. Let's get my morning coffee. It's the more depth and layers you have in something, the better it looks generally. So here, I wonder. Yeah, let's do it. Let's be adventurous. Put a step in. Hopefully it doesn't come back to become a problem later. And now, in here, I can just hit Shift plus and then select that face, nice quick. And then Control I because I want brick to be at the top. New. And then Control I. And let's just make this the same as the soul and assign it, and then separate by seam. Same story. Yeah, like I said, it's going to be the most boring video in the world, but I'm just showing you where and how I do this stuff. The reason I'm not unwrapping the ends, not setting them as seams, is when I start tiling these kits and putting them next to each other together, then if you have a seam here and you put another face in and you then attach everything, then you have a seam on a panel of flat faces, which will break up your selection and eventually just become a major hassle to work with. So it's not advised at all. That would be, I can actually select that, select this, Control L, and link materials, because that's going to be the same material. Again, there's no weird unwraps required, it's just straightforward unwrap. It's unwrapped, Control, select active object, Control L, link material. That should be fine there. This is concrete, so actually all of that can be the same. Select active object, Control L, link material. So here I can see an unwrap issue, and it is because I haven't unwrapped it. Okay. Mark seam. Now everything will fold. It will tear right up to here, and then use that as the fold to hinge from. Right. Now on this guy, I don't really like what I've done here with the vertices, so I'm going to hit that one, hit Q, and weld them at last again, at last. Select that, select this, Q at last, and then hinge, or seam rather, leading up to a hinge in the unwrap. That's right. And now over here. So GY, GX, AQ, merge by distance, Control E, mark seam, and this Shift Alt X to just get rid of them. We can sort out polygons later, and then I'm going to open these corners, and you'll see why. Mark seam. That's why. So you can see the unwrap now. This is your hinge, right down there, and then this unfolds like a present, little 3D present. I love the texturing side of this stuff. I was normally the guy playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare, first one, getting shot in the back because I'm standing looking at textures. It happened every game. I was never any good at it because I enjoyed looking at the 3D too much. Never looked at the opponents. Well, that's what you get. So mark this as a seam. This would also be a concrete, but it most probably be a different concrete, a more dirty one. So I'm going to put concrete over here and then make a duplication of that material so we don't have to do this again, but then call it concrete porch. And then fix that little caps error. Okay, so now no issues here. We obviously later, I mean, these things are quite sharp, and a sharp corner is never good for lighting because there's no highlights. So what you want is you want soft corners if you want to highlight something by the sun or whatever other method. So later on, when everything's unwrapped and finished, we very well might add some detail in and cuts in, but for now we just want to make sure the seams are in the right place. So here I'm literally gonna, what's happening here? It looks like double face. No, literally gonna just make sure everything is unwrapped, mark that as a seam, and then I will most probably need to break either that edge or this edge, otherwise things are going to start looking wonky. All of these are the same material, so I can go select two of them, then make that the active object, hit Control L, and link materials. Now I know this is going to be the all same materials across. So I'm just going to clean this mesh a little bit. It's annoying me. All these cuts. That doesn't need to be there. That doesn't need to be there. And then obviously later we can just start cleaning all that. I don't want to really do it now. But anyway, I'm just going to keep these cuts in the same place actually, because might need them for topology's sake. Now, when it comes to this, I think I'm going to make that the same as the porch. So all of that is going to be concrete porch, and we'll maybe porch isn't the best. Concrete dirty, maybe. Let's see, we can still change it. So unwrap this by breaking the corners. E mark seam, and this E mark seam, and then I'm gonna unmark that because I want everything attached to each other if possible. Otherwise you start managing little individual pieces of 3D. Q, select by edge ring, and then mark seam. Oh, Q, select by edge ring, Control E, mark seam, 3, mark seam, and 2, Control E, clear seam, unwrap. There we go. Okay. Not rocket science, just boring. Same story, all of this. This can actually most probably doesn't have to be a seam, but this would need to be a seam. All of these guys. Control E, and that's mark seam, and that one and this one would need to be a mark seam because, yeah, let's mark all of these as seams. So you guys are obviously welcome to contact me if you have any questions. I don't explain everything as I go. I don't think it's necessary because this isn't really beginner stuff. I'm assuming you have an operational knowledge of the program. The idea is more to actually understand how to very quickly make modular content, and that I'm hoping I am getting across to you. Feel free to shoot me a message either through my Instagram. It's probably the best way that you can do that. Let's just go there. That is my Instagram. Just if you need personal help, like individually, shoot me a message. I'm sure we can sort out something or do a screen share, or if there's a bunch of you, we can all do one screen share with about 5 or 6 or how many ever people, and then address any questions. All right, I've got the unwrap ready. Then I'm going to do the same for the windows, but I'm just going to do that offline, I think. Well, let's do one, I'll do the rest offline. So here, important thing is just to get those edges, and I'll mark that as a seam, and then I'll want to break this loop at least one corner. So now what I'm left with is that outer edge, which means I need to break these corners. And now you can go and do the same on the rest of the windows, and then this is gonna be, surprise surprise, no surprise. And then UV check. Yep, that looks good to me. There's nothing strange here. Okay, so that's our window frame. And then the windows, little trick here, I only have to do one window, because let's just actually do all of that, and then Q, edge ring, Control E, mark seam, A, U, unwrap. That gives you that unwrap. And here I'm going to make another material and another material. So this, I'm just going to select that and invert it so that I can change to the window frame, taking the same material, and Control I and make that window and assign the window. Same story. Most repetitive video in YouTube history, I guess, but the idea is to give you an idea of how I go about the stuff. So now I can go select that one, select this one, Control L, copy UV maps, or has anything changed from 2.2? Control L, link materials, yeah. So it did copy the UV map, and it did copy the materials over. So again, I only have to do this one. I can copy UV and materials from the other one. I only have to do one and copy the UVs from the other one. It takes out the same here. I'm going to do these offline anyway. This file is going to be in the link in the description, like all the other files for day 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I will see you tomorrow on what I hope and think is day 5, if I'm not confused. Cheers. Alright, day 6, materials. We're getting there. Had very little sleep. Wish me luck. I don't know how this is going to go. Let's see. Alright. As with the other stuff, I'm going to upload and link all the work files so you can just follow. The aim here is not to battle through this. And we looked at some of the references on day 1. The brick and the concrete and the soils and everything, and I put together another 3D file where we will just append materials from, and then you can go right ahead and do that. So what you'll see is I've got like a cinder block. Oh jeez, let's get some coffee. I'm gonna die. Like a red cinder block thing going on here, then 2 different types of concrete, and then like a green painted metal, and that we're going to use for windows. Obviously we can, once we've got these things in the file, we can make variations of them, which I would suggest that we do. A couple of other things that I don't think I have mentioned that I should have mentioned. So what you'll see in a lot of 3D is all the vertices collected at one point. The reason I didn't do this here is because if I pull everything into a triangle and then stack all these tiles together, I don't get a loop selection that will carry through the entire height of the building from top all the way through to the bottom, and that is something that it grates me. I don't like it. It's just a preference, but the other practical thing about this is that if you want to sculpt this thing, then it is easier to subdivide something equally in equal spaces that has cuts that terminates 90 degrees to the side. The second you start pulling a cut to the corner, you're going to have a very difficult time subdividing something to make a decent sculpt. Yeah. Alright, it's time to just start hacking these things, put them together. Like I said, things will start going quickly. We do want to just assign materials, so I'm going to start with a basic one, concrete beam. Now, download your material file and navigate to it. Hit the append button, hit materials, and hit collections, or actually don't hit materials, just A across all of them. Dot stroke, I don't know what that is, I don't want that. And hit append. So now everything is in the scene. So on these guys, concrete dirty, that's our this is what happens when you don't sleep. Porch area on the second story, I suppose the platform. So I'm going to put that, I'm just going to use maybe the concrete beam, and we can make another variation of that. I'm going to hit this, 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 and this, and hit the materialed one. I don't think that's a word. Control L and link materials. The one that has a material assigned to it is what I'm trying to say. These guys, sill, I want them to be a concrete sill. I'm going to texture 1, or assign a material to 1, sill, and then everything that is a sill, this might be a beam and not a sill actually. Actually, you know what? That's also a, this is all beam, yeah. Link materials, this guy, concrete beam, would be beam. The brick would be my red brick wall, and you see how quickly this is going to go now. I select sill, and that's going to have to be my concrete sill. I'm going to have to select the brick, that's going to be my brick wall. Again, brick is the brick wall, sill is the concrete sill. This is a beam link. That's why I said when we start going fast, we will go fast, and that's the nice thing about, if you set yourself up well, then things take a lot less time than otherwise. If you start weak, you're gonna just end up taking a lot of time. And also, it's one of those things where the clearer your direction is, the quicker you're gonna go towards the end. It's just one of those things. I see a lot of like I follow some of these 3D guys on Reddit, and then they'll post something and then they'll say, how do I make this more atmospheric? And I'm dying not to comment. If you had a reference image, you just emulate that. But now you're shooting in the dark with no direction, and you don't know where you want to go. So how should someone else give you direction? And you're going to get 15 different suggestions from different sides leading to different places. I suggest you get a reference image, buddy. Just follow your reference. Anyway, it's a little pet peeve of mine. Alright, what we don't have is a window. I forgot that. It sucks. And also the door. As I said before, I'm not that phased about these guys not having the same UV scale or direction. The bottom line is that they do unwrap well. Once we've got them all in a building, we're going to unwrap them there as one piece at the end. So, yep, that's not the right one. Frame, frame, frame. Same story. Frame, frame, frame. Is there any other windows that I'm missing? It looks like I've got everything. Here, this guy. That shouldn't be frame, it should just be window. Window. And the frame should be the frame. Okay, you guys still following, obviously, because this is, I'd be worried if you're not following this. This is simple stuff. Okay, now I'm going to put a placeholder in here to like for the window, and I can always come back to the window. So the window will just take that checker map out, I think. We know the windows are unwrapped well. That's not an issue. So what? Actually, this guy should be the frame. And the window should be the window. Window? No. I know what I've done here. Control I. Assign. There we go. Select the window, and then obviously we can just do like a mock alpha for the window. It's not really going to show up anything now. I think the important thing here is just to start building. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay, so now let's start building our reference piece here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to attach this to that. I will just hit Control P and link it. And same here, Control P and link it, because if I attach it now, then it's going to mess with my unwraps. I want the windows and the window frames to stay separate at the end of the day, because if they don't, things are going to get very messy. If at some point I decide I want to take this into Unreal, then it'll be unreal how difficult I've made my life when I have to unwrap everything as one. My recommendation would be do the building, unwrap that as one. Do the windows, unwrap that as one, because that's essentially something that you want to be able to build blueprints with in Unreal, and then follow suit. Okay, so we've got at the base we have a door, and then we'll have a window. So I'm going to build up here. So let's call it 4,000 up. Then that behind the stairs will just be this. It'll be plain for obvious reasons. There's no rocket science involved there. You don't put a door behind stairs. I mean, geez. Well, I guess in South Africa you can do whatever you want. Then at the other end, this is a very small little, it's actually redonkulously small. We can see what this looks like afterwards, and if it needs to be bigger, it'll get bigger. Opposite end, we can always put a window. Let's put the window. It's difficult to rotate in here. Control MX, rotate Z, minus 90, rotate Z, minus 90, and that gives us that. Okay, now start to build corners. Actually, yeah. Now we actually more on the right track. Control MX, and then yeah, got it. It looks a little bit more better. See, this is now when you're working with modular content, you have a little bit more power to do a couple of variations. If you guys are not following, drop something in the comment section and tell me I'm going too fast or too slow or just not making sense. It seems to be the comment I get most is I don't understand. Doesn't make any sense. You know why I'm putting the snap to median, right? You can see it snapping to the median point there rather than snapping to the closest vertex. Okay, there's level 1. Now we can put this guy in here. Probably Shift DX, Control MX, GX, GZ. And then again, Shift DY, Control MY, GY. And now beam across in the middle. Median point's right there, so just going to use this. See, this is where a little bit of prep time at the beginning does help quite a bit. What is going on here then? Yeah, this is what's going on. If I didn't set myself up for this, it would right now be an absolute mess. I'd be battling if I'm honest. Shift DY, Control MY, GY. Same story. GZ. Hang on. GZ. GZ. Yeah, it looks like everything is in line. Shift D, rotate Z 90, G. Okay. Okay, you can see what's happening here. It's not that bad. Now we're gonna place our stairs early on. I think it's probably the best. Let's just move this up. GZ1. Another 1000. Shift D. That should probably be on the median. And it will literally, this is where you guys can, if you catch my drift, you can probably log off, and if you wanted to, no obligation to sit and follow this stuff. See where we might have a little bit of an height issue here in how things were worked out. Rotate Z. There we got it. GY. GY. We'll see now. I suspect it's been a little bit of a miscalculation on my side here. It shouldn't be the end of the world. Should be easy enough to adapt. Oh, well, so far so good, I guess. Alright, it's Friday at least. We have that going for us. Now, up the stairs is a big window. So stay true to the reference. I'm going to put this guy over here. And now I can just, because I've linked everything, I can just grab that, hit median G, put it right there, rotate Z, and we are at 90. Again, what I have here is double faces that I shouldn't be having, which is a problem. I'm going to sort that at the end though. I'm not going to sort it out now, but it is something to take note of. Shift DZ, GZ, it gives you that, and now we can most probably do a plain one at the front. I think so, like so, and we'll do a small window on the side. Must probably be, let's call it a bathroom window, maybe. I mean, this is so small, I suspect there wouldn't be place for a bathroom. It's literally like almost like a little watchtower vibe that we have going here. And maybe a door at the other end, because what's the point having stairs if they go nowhere? It would be a little bit of a phenomenal waste of resource, I guess. Rotate Z 180. Okay, and then we just bring that guy straight in here, and again we can see everything sits quite well. See, this is where my stairs are a little bit miscalculated. We'll fix that. It's not the end of the world. So now I need one of these guys to go onto that corner. A modular kit, if you ever want to do a large amount of 3D quickly, your way of achieving that is through modular kit. You cannot achieve it by not using modular content. Just take it from me, please. It's not possible. So, yeah. Okay, that is a little bit unrealistic. You would never have a situation like this in terms of structural engineering, or civil engineering rather. So what we can do is we can obviously just within reason pull, actually just on the side we can most probably extrude that out by 200 and then take that edge and just Control X to delete it, Control E, mark that as seam, Control E, clear that as a seam, and then Control E, clear these as seams, and AU, unwrap, and we have a functional new unwrap. We most probably need to do GZ, do exactly the same down here, EZ, Z, come on, this is where you want to tell the PC I know better. Control E, mark those seams, clear this seam, clear that seam, Control E, clear seam, AU, unwrap, and we have a working unwrap. Great. Okay. Now again, the sills, we're just going to go straight around, copy this whole thing, the whole thing. Oh, not that. Well, I might as well actually, come to think of it, might as well grab these corners. Shift DZ 2200, because that's the height that we made our, oh, okay. It's a little bit higher than that, and again, switch to closest GZ. I find myself always hovering between median and closest. It's generally where things happen. So I think what's going to happen here is that this stair will need to continue across, and then that door will need to be there. We are at the third story according to the reference. This is going to be the last floor. We obviously don't have to stick to the reference. Sometimes it is very nice to just stay a little bit flexible on your stuff and just go where the, it sounds corny, but go where the art takes you. E200, okay. Control X to delete that, and then just / to isolate. Control E, mark seam. Control E, clear seam AU, unwrap, and we have a decent unwrap, and we can continue on with life. So this guy, I'm just gonna go GY, just gonna pull it out up until that corner, and then we're gonna take one of these and build from rotate Z minus 90, rotate Z minus 90, and then build from here. X. Yeah, so the math was good, I guess. Something I learned after school, 20 years too late. Okay, door up here. And Shift DZ, GZ. As you can see, this little guy with stairs which probably need to be moved up a little bit. Maybe there needs to be one more stair, or maybe that step is actually fine. Right now it sits a little bit odd with me. It needs to sit here at the very least, preferably here. Which means we will have GZ that, and we're gonna have, we might need to go Control X, E200, and EZ, and that should also be 200 if we did our math correct. And now it's a case of Control X on that, and then rework this AQ by distance. We're going to clear the seam, mark those as a seam, and then a U. We'll see what the unwrap looks like. Not that great. So Control E, mark seam, Control E, mark seam. Good. It's better. No, we also, oh, okay, it will actually never work in reality. GX, Y, E200. The nice thing is if you have a modular kit like this, then the small fixes are very small. You're not trying to model something into a building where that very quickly becomes difficult. If you started this thing with a box, I can promise you, you'd think at the start, geez, I'm going to nail this in like 1 hour flat. And then there's going to come a point where things aren't going to work out, and you're going to be very sorry. And you're going to wish that that default cube was a default plane. I'll give you my word. Yeah, anyways, that's just me. I model everything in planes, I think. I think it's just a better way to go about it, if I must be honest. Needs to be median. G, rotate Z, minus 90. And what should we do about this door? We can probably just plain, I guess. Obviously we've still got these guys, which if we want to make a variation of that, we can very easily put that in. Rotate Z, and then we can do exactly the same. Did we not grab the windows? Anyway, that's it's not a biggie. I wonder if I didn't delete. Yes, I see what I did. No, I don't see what I did actually. Actually, I don't know. I don't know at all what I did. But anyway, it's not. I see what I did. Let's try again. Let's just get everything right, because once you start missing parts, it becomes a bit of a pain. I don't think everything was linked. Control P, object, G. Yeah. So now that is either not everything was linked or not everything was copied. Rotate Z, minus 90, and there we go. And then this is one of those plain ones. G, there. Rotate Z, minus 90. And now we can do the roof. Shift D. Let's just bring this guy in, and that needs to sit on the corner. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a point to grab it by. Shift DX and Control MX. And again, Shift DY, put it on that corner, GMY. There we go. And now this, if we have a point on this corner, Shift D, G. So, okay, so that should GY, X. And then these in between, I'm just going to hit Control X and delete. A, U, give myself a nice unwrap again. Delete that guy. Shift D. Rotate Z minus 90. This is exactly, by the way, this is exactly the same that I would do in Unreal. I would take the parts in, I wouldn't take buildings in. The only difference in Unreal is I would create a blueprint, and then I would attach all of these assets as static meshes to that blueprint. Okay, so what we can do now, I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to take the center of the roof. I'm going to get the center of the roof by selecting those across, and now I'm going to do at the right height a plane. So you can already see GY, FX, GY, GY, GX. I'm going to give myself cuts that correspond to the existing cuts, just in case. I'm going to subdivide this thing to sculpt it. Control A, just collapse rotation and scale. Tab A, U, unwrap. So this shouldn't be here. GY, it should be there. And now what I can do is just Control L, link that material. Yeah, so now it's a case of we've literally got our windows and doors to do, but we can unwrap the building as is. That's right, that's it for today. And we will continue on in day 7. We'll finish up with a door, we'll finish up with the windows, and then after that let's see where that takes us. Have a good Friday. Cheers, fellas.
So fast forward a few hours and a couple of days of just working on this before I start my day job. You can see that I've put together a number of assets using these specific tiles, and these tiles are that's all I used, and I was very quickly able to create different assets of different shapes and sizes. So it's got a small higher one, more of a squat low one, and then a lower one, and then even a semi-round one like this, and obviously just needed to modify the landing a little bit, but that just shows you the power of modular assets. Now when you created an asset like this, you've got two choices at the end. You can either collapse everything so that you've got one sort of core item, or you can parent everything to a base, and I use a mix of the two depending on what I need to do. Obviously if you collapse everything, then you just think about the impact of that on your UVs. It is sometimes nicer to keep everything modular and then still take a modular approach to texturing as well. So for this one, I just did an extra decal sheet, and I created a UV channel, or a second UV channel, in which I just overlay the details. So once you've got all these assets and you've built a number of different scenarios, then it very quickly you can start combining extra UV layers almost, and then just adding bits depending on where you want them, and that really just shows you the power of these assets. Now all of these assets I did using those tiles. So with these ones over here, all I did is swap out the material on the tile, same assets, and then I just needed to do a roof out of corrugated steel. Again, same thing for this, just swapped out the texture on the tile. So it is incredibly important that if you need to create mass volume, if it could be a freelance project or concept art or anything, but if you need to create volume, then I would highly suggest using modular content. And then obviously when you have a kit like this, if you're doing a freelance job for ArtStation or anyone on there, client you've met or anyone, then it becomes easy to just bring those assets into a scene like this and very quickly build out a very complicated, or something. It actually is not a complex scene. It looks like it, but it's not, because everything is so modular. It very quickly became a situation of just importing these assets that were very quickly built. I mean, over a couple of days. In fact, the texturing, just adding the layers of textures, was a little bit more timely than the actual building the kit. And you can see the amount of detail in here. Very quick to create, and it looks intimidating. But I can tell you now, if you stick to using modular content, then you're going to be able to very quickly create something that looks very complex, like this. There's obviously quite a bit of chromatic aberration. I would recommend not using this much, but here you can see same tiles, same story, just different textures at this stage.